Waves of pain washed over her entire body. She had never felt anything like this before. The news spread fast, and in the blink of an eye, staff crowded the doorway of the small room, staring at her. Some were there to help, while others were there out of pure curiosity. She didn't realize how serious the situation was until she heard someone mutter one word: ambulance. Bartending at the casino certainly wasn't Maddie's first option when it came to her dream job. She worked extremely long hours and she was left to deal with annoying, drunk customers for her entire shift. So, why did she stick around? Well, she earned enormous tips. She was saving every cent she made to open a small cafe and bakery in the future. At first, she could handle the long hours until one fateful day. Maddie and her bartending friends had to resist the urge to roll their eyes as their manager stood before them. He had his nose in the air as he proudly adjusted his brand-new suit while he spoke. He thought he looked like one of the bigwigs that owned the casino, but they all knew better. "We're changing the dress code," he shrugged. What he revealed next left the staff speechless. He revealed that the men would be given the easy job of staying behind the counter, and the girls were expected to wear tiny black dresses and high heels while they walked the casino floors. But what was the real kicker? They had to do this for their entire 12-hour shifts. Everyone immediately started complaining, unhappy with the manager's choices. But his reaction made Maddie's blood boil. He refused to hear them out, simply telling them to suck it up, and that was it. He wasn't going to change his mind. He then told the staff that if they didn't like it, they could simply quit, reminding them that girls like them were dispensable. Maddie's heart began to race as anger boiled within her, but it spilled over when she saw what they were expected to wear. When Maddie tried the dress on, she could barely breathe because of how intentionally tight it was. To make matters even worse, the heels were so high that after 10 minutes of wearing them, she could already feel the sharp pain in her calves. She wanted to rip it off, feeling so extremely uncomfortable. How could her boss be so blatantly sexist? She wanted to scream and storm out of the building, but that wouldn't help the other girls. She calmed herself, thinking hard before she came up with a brilliant idea. All the other girls came up with sneaky rotation schedules to allow each of them a few extra breaks. Each girl got a few minutes to sit down and unzip their tight dress. But Maddie didn't take part in this. She sucked it up and stood tall, walking the casino floor as instructed. Soon, the burning sensation spread through her entire body. But this was just the beginning of her brilliant idea. Pins and needles shot from her ankles to her hips, but she carried on until her feet felt like they were on fire. The other girls could see how badly she was hurting, begging her to stop. But she couldn't stop now. With gritted teeth, she continued serving drinks. This was what the manager wanted, and she was giving him what he wanted. By the time it was 9 p.m., all eyes were on Maddie. But what was she doing? Maddie stumbled into the changing room once her excruciating shift had come to an end. Every nerve in her body was aching. In the middle of the room stood Ms. Markham's from upper management, a confused look on her face. A staff member had called her in. Everyone in the room gasped when Maddie unzipped the back of her tight dress. Her skin was littered with DP, red indentations where the seams and other parts of the tight dress had pressed into Maddie's skin. She was sure to have a few bruises after this day. For the first time in hours, she could take a full breath, and it made her head spin and swirl. But when she slipped out of her high heels, Ms. Markham's eyes went wide, and she clutched her stomach. Blood oozed from worn, open wounds on her heels and around her toes. The entire inside of her shoes was coated in slimy red. Suddenly, Maddie's world turned blurry, and her body finally gave out. By the time she woke up again, the agony was still there like the fires of some actual hell, but she could also hear furious yelling. As Maddie's distraught friend cradled her in her arms, Ms. Markham stood nose to nose with their immediate manager, who had insisted on the dress code changes. As paramedics rushed in and got her on a gurney, she could hear the blissfully sweet words PR disaster, lawsuit, misogynistic, ridiculous, and crazy. The rest of her crusade unfolded in the hospital. Between the entire female waitstaff and their video phones, they had captured everything. Maddie watched the compilation with satisfaction and awe. Even she was stunned that she had made it through the shift. Her raw rage and utter determination had triggered some vital changes. but there was one in particular that was very gratifying. The skimpy dresses would stay, but they would be loose and flowing. The dreary high-heeled shoes were changed back to flats. Men and women bartenders would rotate between the floor and the bar as before the change. The vial manager was also put under review before being transferred to an insignificant department. But would Maddie stay? Upper management had cut her a generous check for her pain and suffering. It wasn't enough to hand in her resignation the next day, but she was so much closer to her dream. In a couple of years, she would smell oolong and scones instead of cocktails and addiction. Then she would never step foot in a casino again. Maddie had sacrificed her own well-being for her female co-workers, and she made an important point to her boss. High heels are not only painful to work in, but it was sexist to expect the ladies to be uncomfortable while they carried out their shifts, but the men weren't forced to wear anything uncomfortable. Her boss clearly had double standards. When asked how Maddie's loved ones felt about the incident, Maddie said, "With the initial changes, my mother was a bit hesitant, saying to wait and see what the dress is like. How there wasn't any real need to change it at all, but the heels were a silly idea and a major health and safety hazard. She told me to take flat shoes with me and not to push myself, but when I got home at about 8 a.m., she was horrified," Maddie explained. She said it was ridiculous that they expect us to wear them all shift, and they clearly backtracked when they saw my feet because they knew it meant potential problems. She was supportive but was really concerned about my injuries, Maddie continued. She said, "I should have listened to my coworkers but was proud that I stood up for myself and others. My mother didn't want me to get hurt. My mother was the one who ended up putting the bandages on my feet properly for a while, as she was a nurse. It was about 4 to 5 years since it happened, but I remember I couldn't even wear comfortable flat shoes without bandages for around 3 weeks to over a month," Maddie revealed. That was just with the injury to heal enough to not open from the friction. On my days off, I was either sitting because it was sore to walk or pretty much skating around in my socks when it was almost healed. Despite the injuries on her feet, Maddie said that if she were faced with the same situation, she'd do it all over again. "Yes, I would if there is no other option or it was given on short notice. Not because of vanity reasons, but companies that expect women to wear high heels for extended periods of time is against basic health and safety for individuals and the company. It can permanently damage a woman's feet and cause unnecessary strain, which could lead to further problems. When these dress codes are enforced, they do not seem to consider the individual's comfort in a busy working environment," Maddie said. "I have hypermobility syndrome in my right knee, which I grew up with, which causes my joints to dislocate, especially under pressure. Wearing heels does not help. If I knew what I know now back then, I would have definitely joined a workforce union to help with such matters," Maddie revealed. "Also, check your company policy is in line with laws and regulations regarding work where you stay. Always make sure you know your rights. If they violate it, report it to your union representative. I think women should not be forced to wear high heels. Heels should be optional, as long as the shoes don't cause harm to the individuals," Maddie expressed. Companies could easily say that they want their employees to have professional smart attire without the inclusion of high heels. There are smart flat shoes available to women as well as heels, so it should be up to the individual. In 2017, more than 150,000 people signed a petition supporting London receptionist Nicola Thorpe, who was sent home from work without pay after refusing to wear high heels. Furthermore, an inquiry into work dress codes has exposed widespread discrimination against women. Helen Jones, who chairs the petitions committee, said there was a long way to go to solve the problems, but everyone in the workplace deserves better than this. Nicola Thorpe, a resident of Hackney, was only 27 years old when her superior kicked her out of the office for not adhering to the dress code. Nicola had only wanted to make ends meet. After all, living in London was costly, and Nicola, like many Londoners, was doing her best to get by. She didn't know what terrible future awaited her. Nicola had found a job at a finance company where she could finally find a way to pay her bills, but she wasn't there for a day before trouble came knocking. It was early morning when it happened. Nicola had just arrived at the office when management informed her she had to wear shoes with heels between 2 and 4 inches. She wasn't having it. Nicola's issue wasn't as simple as not wanting to wear heels to work. Granted, she highlighted that working in heels for 7 or more hours was a hellish experience. Nicola asked for a chance to wear presentable flat shoes. She would have struggled to work her shift in heels. She hoped management would hear her out, only to be met by the worst answer she could ever wish for. The company asked Nicola to go buy heeled shoes. Nicola said to BBC London, "I told them, if you can give me a reason why wearing flats would impair me to do my job today, then fair enough, but they couldn't." Nicola's job included a 9-hour shift escorting clients to and from the office. There was no way she could do it in high heels. There was only one thing she could do. Nicola shared her story, and to her surprise, many women across the world came to her side, sharing their harsh experiences with the office dress code. Nicola admits she was scared of opening up, but is glad she did so. She started a petition for the law to be changed regarding women being forced to wear high heels at work. Her petition is still going strong, and she hopes that one day women will be able to work in comfortable conditions. After all, it is only fitting